Hey guys, Weeb here. Today we're going to be doing a class guide on the Gunner class in Dragonraja. So this class guide is actually going to be a little bit different. This game is more of a community game, so what we'll be doing is today we'll be talking about some basic tips and how you should be using your skills on your class. However, underneath the video there's going to be a Google Doc, one for every class. And as we all play the game as a community and find out better strategies and better ways to play the class, this will be consistently updated to help the more hardcore players get a min-maxing way of play style and getting to endgame as fast as possible. So do go down there and open up the Google Doc and have a look at all the skills and stuff if you want a more in-depth understanding of the class. So for the Gunner class, the Gunner's class role would be that it is a long-range AoE DPS. Unlike some gunners though, it is more focused on AoE than single target. A majority of its abilities do AoE up to 5 targets and are much more effective with each extra target that are relatively tight together. If mobs are spread out kind of like this, it doesn't really matter, but if they are close together, you do some whopping DPS. Let's talk about some pros and cons, shall we? So, the pros of the Gunner class would be a high damage DPS. So they are among the highest DPS because they don't just hit one target, they hit 5. So even if they don't hit quite as hard in single target, when you group them up, your damage is amplified and in the end does much more than a single target DPS could possibly hope to achieve. Next up, a lot of AoE skills like we just talked about. Just about every skill is AoE. Like I really need to emphasize how AoE heavy this class is. And obviously its range attacks make it a little bit easier to dodge because there's a lot of mechanics in the game where melee classes kind of get the short end of the stick, where they have to run out of big circles and stuff like that, whereas the Gunner can stay at maximum range and avoid a lot of the mechanics just by default being a ranger. So some of the cons for the Gunner would be it's weak at defense. It doesn't have any real defensive abilities except a dodge like this where you can dodge. You may be able to rustle something up with your talents or whatnot to help you get a bit more defense, but overall, you are relatively weak, so don't rely on defense, and you're going to have to dodge. So, another con for the Gunner class is that it requires good skill to make full use of its kit. So you're probably thinking, well, Gunner like this, it's basically dodge like that and shoot. But the reason that it's not that simple is because of the AoE. If, for example, there's 4 mobs up and your AoE hits 5 mobs, but you're only going to hit 2, you need to position yourself in a way that your AoE is going to hit all of them, rather than just hit 2 of them, for example, because your damage is halved. So your positioning is much more important because of your AoE. Also, that you have some abilities that cannot be stopped once you activate them, and if an enemy moves or whatnot. So you kind of need to preemptively know when an enemy's going to move or use a big attack, because if you use a big attack and can't move, you basically waste a massive cooldown and lose a lot of AoE damage. Okay, let's have a look at the abilities. So as I mentioned before, all the abilities are going to be in the doc and going to be updated as we all get into the beta. And today we're going to have a look at the basic ones. So let's go into the skill menu. In here we have Pulse Bomb. So, Pulse Bomb spends 40 energy to fire a Pulse Bomb, dealing physical damage to a target and up to 5 nearby enemies. Cannot be used when energy is low, 4-second cooldown. So, the major problem with this is that it costs 40 energy. It does nice damage, but it costs 40 energy, which is quite a bit of energy. Next up, we have your bread and butter ability, Wind Shot. So, it deals physical damage to the target and restores 20 energy, and inflicts a wind mark for 3 seconds. Now, the wind mark here is why this ability is so important. Normal attack and pulse bombs, which is the ability we just spoke about up here, trigger a wind blast when they damage a target with wind mark, dealing area damage and restoring 2 energy. So, if you use wind shot, they will get a mark on them, and then you auto attack and shoot them with pulse bomb. You're going to do your AoE from pulse damage, from pulse bomb, your AoE from your mark, and you're going to get energy back because you have wind mark on them. There is an ability, which we'll talk a little bit about later, which actually makes wind mark even more powerful. So next up, let's have a look at Particle Cannon. Expends all energy to deal physical damage up to 5 enemies in a straight line and inflicting delay for 1.2 seconds. Cool. 5% increased damage for every 1 energy spent, up to a maximum of 500%. So basically, the more energy you have, the more damage you do. Requires minimum 30 energy to use, cannot be used when energy is low. Immune to most control effects when activating. 40-second cooldown. So basically, you can cancel this, but this ability is a particle cannon, so it's not exactly easy to, hit people with if they're moving around rather fast. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to use Wind Shot, and then you're going to want to combine Wind Shot with Pulse Bomb and auto attacks, and this is going to bring your energy up towards 100. And when you're bringing your energy up, then you're going to basically drain your energy using Particle Cannon. Now, Particle Cannon is kind of like your ultimate move, which uses all your energy. So only use it when you know the enemy's not going to move or the AoE together, because it really does a lot of damage. As you can see here, the damage difference from having low energy to high energy is quite different. Here we have Arbiter of Peace. So Arbiter of Peace is an ability that you're not generally going to use in your basic rotation. So it knocks away up to 5 surrounding enemies and deals physical damage. Switch to heavy form for 15 seconds. You're immune to delay, normal attacks become suppression, movement speed reduced by 25%, and immune to most control effects. So basically what this does is it slams you down into the ground and it knocks everyone away and kind of makes you immune to a lot of things and puts you in heavy form. And what this is going to do is this. Hopefully the cooldown is available. So the cooldown would be this. So as you see, I slammed the ground, knocked everyone down, and now you pull out a minigun, and which you can use for suppressive fire and AoE damage. This is quite nice when it comes to PvE, but generally I wouldn't use this in PvP unless you're really trying to escape. You can use a talent, which we'll talk more about later, which can make this better, but generally I don't think it's very good for PvP situations. Okay, so going back to skills. So basically this skill will bring you into your gunner mode, where you're going to do AoE effect and basically knock everyone away in an emergency situation. Okay, let's have a look at your other abilities. Here we have Tesla. So it summons a Tesla at the target location for 7 seconds. Tesla shocks one random enemy every 1 or 0.7 seconds, dealing physical damage and inflicting shock for 3 seconds. So following those numbers, you can actually shock people basically permanently 2 at once, maybe even 3. And you've got to drag the skill to choose the location. It does a bit of physical damage, but the problem with this is that people will move because it's based on a location rather than a person. So if you're using it on a mob and you want to stun them, that's cool. Especially if they're in a group, you can stun 2 or 3 of them at the same time. But if they're in PvP, you can get them if they're not paying attention, but most people will move out of it pretty quickly because your dash is pretty quick. Okay, next up is your landmine. Places an SPI landmine, which lasts 25 seconds and becomes invisible after 3 seconds. Basically, you put a landmine down, and it will turn invisible, and when anybody comes near it, the landmine will track them and run at them and jump at them and explode. It'll hit them, and it'll make them float, which I believe prevents them from doing other actions, not entirely sure. It also deals physical damage up to 5 enemies and inflicts aerial, which I was just talking about. So you can walk into a bunch of, say, NPCs and drop the bomb in between them. But honestly, the amount of time it takes you from getting max range, which is where you should be shooting from, to walk in and drop the landmine underneath their feet and then walking out, I don't know if that's necessarily worth it. You can try it out with your different talents because there is a talent that strengthens it. But overall, it's an okay ability, but I don't think it's exactly worth putting into your average rotation, and more of a situational ability. Next up, we have Heat Blast. So summons a satellite that bombards the target after 3 seconds. Deals heavy physical damage to the target and up to 5 nearby enemies, inflicting delay. So I believe delay prevents them from using abilities for that long. So as you see, this hits 5 enemies, so it does quite a lot of damage, and you can see down here that it does a hell of a lot of damage. Problem being, it has a 75-second cooldown. So group them up and basically plow them with it. Okay, so Stealth Camouflage. Enters invisible status and clears all control effects while increasing defense for 10 seconds. While invisible, enemies cannot see nor select you, but can still sustain AoE damage. So in PvP, I believe this would be extremely effective. However, when it comes to bosses, the main reason that you'd want to go invisible is to avoid damage, but the AoE is what you're trying to avoid. You're getting hit anyway, so it's not as useful. You can use it, I believe, to stop them aggroing you, but overall, I don't think it's something you'd use all the time, and much more situational when you just kind of need an emergency escape. It does increase your defense a little bit, so if you get hit by an AoE, it could save you, but generally it's not something that I use very often. Can be powered up by a talent. So the basic rotation would be Wind Shot, followed by auto attacks and Pulse Bomb to bring your energy up. Again, Pulse Bomb does use your energy, but you do damage at the same time. When you bring your energy up, you're going to use a Particle Cannon. Don't necessarily have to get 100% for Particle Cannon, but try to get it 80-90% above, and mainly just fire it when you have multiple people on line, because it does use a lot of energy, which is important. The Arbiter of Peace, which is the minigun that I showed earlier, basically when we suppress a bunch of enemies, mostly used for PvE. And this build here, this side, is mostly situational, and you're going to use it just outside of your primary damage, which is located over here. So let's have a look at some of those abilities in real time. So let's start off auto combat. Okay, so if we go in here, let's use... So this is the invisibility. So as you can see, now I'm invisible. There is a talent that when you come out of invisibility and use an attack, you can have an extra effect, but I don't believe that talent is usually worth running. So here we can put down the mine that we talked about earlier. The mine's going to go down, and it's going to explode, and they're all going to take a bunch of damage. There you go. But see, it didn't really do a lot of damage. Next up, there is our stun that we're using. See how it kind of sits on the ground in one location and keeps them stun locked? Okay, for PvE, not so great for PvP because people are just going to run away from it. Okay, so now let's look at these abilities. So let's use Wind Shot. Okay, so now we have about half energy. We use Particle Cannon. And the damage wasn't maximum because it wasn't maxed out. So Wind Shot here has the lowest amount of cooldown. So now you're going to want to shoot them when that's up to get your energy back. And then you're going to use your auto attacks. Probably wait for another wind. Use your wind again, auto attack again, and then hit Q. And there's your damage from your base ability. As you can see, it has a very low cooldown. So you want to keep using it, but it does use up your energy. So these two are going to be your main abilities until your Particle Cannon comes back up. Keep your energy up, and then bang. And then when you're not going to do this, you're going to hit your cannon and basically use Suppress Fire, which will basically suppress the mobs, and mainly used for PvE. Okay, so let's put this back on auto combat. So that is mainly for the PvE aspect. So to not make this video run too long, let's have a quick look at the talents. Again, this stuff will be in the doc, which will be updated, so do keep an eye on. We have a bunch of talents in here. You have 3 sets of talents. I generally believe I go for Charged Implosion, which gives you crit, gives you energy. We have Pulsing Wind, which makes your wind mark last for an additional 3 seconds, which I believe is very, very powerful. Here we go. When releasing skill invisibility, it increases your crit rate for 30 seconds. So if you have 100% energy and you come out of invisibility, then you can just basically use your full combo with an extra 30% crit rate, which with this talent down here, which will bring your energy back up so you can keep using your abilities. And for the S ability, I would generally recommend either Bombardment, which will do the extra damage, although it is delayed, so again, people will dodge it, or use the normal attacks with crits to reduce the Particle Cannon, so you can use the Particle Cannon more often. Depends on your playstyle. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at EX. So all these we can talk about in the doc. Here we have Hawkeye. So Hawkeye releases a Wind Devil to analyze the enemy and reduces their physical and magical defense. They also take an extra 20% damage. Personally, I would use this after you come out of invisibility with an extra 30% crit rate. It just kind of wallop them. Okay? And the other ability that you have on this class would be increases 360 crit level for all ally units within 10 meters. Also gives you more move speed. So if you combine this crit rate with the crit rate you come out of invisibility, you're really going to do a lot of damage. Okay, that covers the basics for the Gunner class in Dragonraja. Check out the doc as it updates for more information. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.